Why would one car ride undo years of trust? What happens when a woman mistakes attention for freedom and her fiancé responds with quiet, lawful precision instead of rage? Can a single decision on a rainy night turn love into a signed ending the next morning? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I never thought one car ride could end an entire future. It was supposed to be harmless, a quick lift home after a company party, a favor from someone who used to know me. Noah, my ex, offered, and I said yes without thinking. The rain was heavy, the music low, and for a moment it felt easy like old times. I didn't realize how that small decision would change everything. When we pulled up to my building, Evan, my fiancé, was standing under the awning. He didn't shout or accuse. He just looked at me and asked if I was serious. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, and somehow that hurt more than any argument could. I told myself he was overreacting, that trust meant freedom, but his silence said otherwise. I didn't see it then, but that silence was the start of something measured, something lawful. While I tried to laugh it off, to spin the story online and to friends, Evan was already preparing. He didn't leave a scene, he built one. By the time I realized he wasn't coming back, the papers were already printed, waiting for my signature. I'm Isolde, and it started the night everything was supposed to feel perfect. Our company had just landed a big client, and my manager insisted we all celebrate. The rooftop bar was loud, lights glinting off the city glass, and someone had ordered too many champagne bottles for it to feel like a casual Friday. I remember laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, feeling that warm rush that comes when people finally notice you. Evan couldn't make it. He said he had a deadline and would meet me at home. I told him not to worry, that I'd be fine. I said it like a challenge, like I needed to prove I could still have my own fun. Then Noah showed up, my ex, the one who had always made things feel like a movie, even when it ended in chaos. He'd been invited through someone on the client's team. The moment I saw him, I felt that flicker, recognition mixed with danger. He smiled and said I looked exactly the same, maybe better. I laughed, said he was still dramatic, and we both knew what that laugh meant. It wasn't romance, not yet, it was validation. We talked about work, about life, about nothing important. Every few minutes I told myself to step away, but I didn't. He remembered the little things, how I hated lime in my drink, how I used to get cold on rooftops. When he draped his jacket over my shoulders, I told myself it was polite. People saw and smiled like it was innocent. I let them. Around midnight, rain began to fall, light at first, then steady. Everyone started calling rides. I was checking for my coat when Noah asked where I was heading. I said home, the usual place. He offered to drive me. I hesitated long enough to convince myself it wasn't hesitation. I said Evan was expecting me. He said it was raining too hard to wait for a car. That small practical logic won. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. The parking garage was nearly empty, puddles reflecting the fluorescent lights. He unlocked the passenger door and I got in. The car smelled faintly of cedar and something familiar I didn't want to name. We drove mostly in silence, the sound of rain filling the space. He asked if I was happy. I said of course, why wouldn't I be? He smiled like he didn't believe me. I asked about his life, his work, his girlfriend. He said there wasn't one right now, that things were quiet. I laughed, said quiet was good. He said, you were never quiet. That one line sat between us the rest of the ride. By the time we reached my street, the rain had softened. I told him to drop me at the corner so Evan wouldn't get the wrong idea. He said, would it be wrong? I pretended not to hear. I was already opening the door when the building lights caught something. Evan standing under the awning, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. My pulse jumped. Noah said softly, guess this is your stop. I stepped out, smoothed my hair, and started toward the entrance. The wet pavement squeaked under my shoes. Evan didn't move. His eyes followed me the whole way. I said his name lightly, like everything was normal. He asked if I was serious. Just that. No anger, no raised voice. The calmness scared me more than shouting would have. I started explaining before I even knew what I was saying, that it was just a ride, that Noah happened to be there, that he was being ridiculous. Evan didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped, he just nodded once and said, "Okay." That single word felt final. He opened the door for me, polite, detached. I walked past him, the warmth of the hallway feeling wrong. Inside the apartment, everything looked exactly the same but different. His mug on the counter, my shoes by the rug, the quiet hum of the fridge. I tried to joke, said he could at least pretend to be jealous. He said, "I don't pretend anymore." He took off his coat, hung it carefully, and went to the guest room. The door closed with a soft click. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, the glow from the screen showing Noah's last text. "Glad you got home safe." I typed back, "Thanks," but didn't hit send. The silence of the apartment pressed in. I turned on music, too loud, something upbeat, to prove to myself I wasn't shaken. When I walked into the kitchen, I noticed small things I hadn't before. A folder labeled Utilities on the counter, a neat list on the fridge in Evan's handwriting, call storage, notary, archive boxes. I rolled my eyes. He was always so organized, always planning something. I told myself it didn't matter. He'd calm down. He always did. Later I showered, wiped the mirror fog, and saw my reflection looking older somehow. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong. I was loyal. I was just tired of being treated like a fragile secret. I climbed into bed alone, scrolling through social media, laughing at a meme I didn't understand, trying to fill the space where his voice should have been. Through the wall, I heard the faint sound of paper sliding from a printer. Just once, then nothing. I told myself it was work, that engineers always had something to print. Still, I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed again, Mara asking if I'd made it home safe. I typed back yes, then added, "He's mad, but he'll get over it." She sent a heart emoji, said, "I deserved fun sometimes." I smiled at that. Fun. That word felt small now. By 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep. The guest room light was still on under the door. I almost knocked, then stopped. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing I cared. I whispered to myself that he was the one being dramatic, that trust wasn't control, that I'd done nothing wrong. The lies sounded almost true in the dark. When morning came, he was already gone. His side of the bed was perfectly made. On the counter sat 2 mugs, his rinsed, mine half full and cold. Next to them was a small sticky note with a reminder written neatly, "Downtown 11:40. I frowned, wondering since when he wrote appointments like that. I crumpled the note and tossed it away. Outside, the rain had stopped. I told myself everything would dry soon, that we'd talk tonight, that this would pass. But the apartment already felt lighter, emptier, as if someone had quietly taken their half of the air with them. I didn't know it yet, but that night's silence had already started turning into evidence. I just didn't see it, because I was too busy telling myself I was right. The morning after felt wrong before I even opened my eyes. The air was too still, like the apartment was holding its breath. Evan had already left, his side of the bed smooth as a hotel sheet. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no good morning text, nothing. Just a calendar alert I didn't remember setting. Review 10 a.m. Maybe I'd done it half asleep. Maybe not. I pushed the thought aside and got ready, moving slower than usual, listening for any sound from the guest room. It was empty now. The faint smell of coffee still hung in the kitchen, but only 1 mug waited by the sink. His, spotless. At work, people were still talking about the rooftop party. Someone had posted a photo of me laughing under the string lights. Noah standing close behind. The caption said, "Best team ever." My co-workers teased me about how good we looked together. I laughed, too loudly, pretending it didn't bother me. I even typed a playful comment, "Just friends celebrating." It got likes immediately. That small burst of attention steadied me. If the internet thought it was fine, it had to be fine. During lunch, Mara called. Her voice was cautious, the way people sound when they've already heard gossip. She said she ran into Evan's cousin at the cafe near his office. Apparently, he mentioned we were taking space. I almost choked on my sandwich. He didn't say that, I told her. She said she was just repeating what she heard. I laughed it off, said, "People love drama," said Evan just needed time. She didn't sound convinced. When I got home, the apartment felt rearranged. Not by much, just enough to make me wonder if I was imagining it. His work bag was missing from the hook near the door. The framed photo from our engagement party, the one I hated because my smile looked crooked, was gone from the shelf. In its place was a small plant we'd been given by his sister. I picked up the pot and turned it around, like it might explain something. Underneath, taped to the bottom, was a small white label, Archive A. I frowned. He'd started labeling plants now. On the counter sat another mug beside mine. I thought maybe he'd left it by mistake, but it wasn't his usual one. It was plain, new, the tag still stuck to the bottom. I laughed softly, told myself it meant nothing. Still, I felt that strange flutter in my chest, the kind that tells you something is shifting just out of sight. Later that night, I called him. He didn't pick up. A few minutes later, he texted. "Working late." That was it. No heart, no name. I typed back "okay," then deleted it. I told myself not to look desperate. He'd come around. He always did. Around midnight, I sat scrolling through comments again. Someone had tagged me in a story. Me at the bar, holding my glass up to Noah. It looked like a toast. The caption read, "She's glowing." I reposted it with a sparkle emoji. Within seconds, hearts rolled in. It felt good, like control. I told myself that was proof I hadn't done anything wrong. When I went to the kitchen for water, I saw something I hadn't before, a thin line of light under the guest room door. I paused, wondering if he was awake after all. I knocked once. No answer. The faint clicking of a keyboard drifted through. "Evan," I said. Still nothing. I leaned closer, heard the low whir of the printer again. Paper fed, stopped, fed again. I wanted to ask what he was printing at midnight, but I didn't. It wasn't worth another argument. The next morning, he was dressed before I even got out of bed. I asked if we could talk tonight. He said sure without looking at me. As he left, I saw a small flash on his phone screen, an alarm titled, "Paper Drop 11:40. I pretended not to notice. At work, Noah messaged me. "Rough night?" I typed, "Nothing I can't handle." He said he hoped I wasn't in trouble. I said Evan just needed to chill. He replied with a laughing emoji and said, "You always did attract the serious ones." I smiled at that, though part of me didn't like how true it sounded. That afternoon, my manager pulled me aside. He said someone had called asking about my office hours last Friday, wanting confirmation I'd stayed late. He thought it was weird. I said it must have been HR, maybe checking for payroll. He nodded but kept watching me like he didn't believe it. When he left, I sat frozen. Evan knew my building's number. I came home early, wanting to catch him before he disappeared again. His car wasn't in the lot. On the dining table, a half-folded shirt, a closed laptop, and a neat line of papers. One page had only 2 words. Meeting, personal. I touched it, felt the indentation where he'd pressed too hard with the pen. I wanted to crumple it, but instead I slid it back where it was. The silence felt heavier than ever. I turned on the TV, scrolled through channels, stopped on a comedy show. The laugh track sounded fake. I opened my phone and saw new comments under my post, people tagging Noah, calling us cute. I typed back a playful reply, then deleted it again. At 9, the front door opened. Evan walked in, calm as always, rain dampening his sleeves. I said, "You've been quiet." He said, "I've been busy." I asked, "With what?" He said, "Just things that matter." I told him not to make everything sound mysterious. He said, "It's only mysterious if you're not paying attention." That line stung. I started to explain again, to tell him the ride meant nothing, that I shouldn't have to feel guilty for being friendly. He said he wasn't angry. I said, "Then what are you?" He said, "Done pretending we're okay." His tone didn't change, not even a little. It wasn't cruel. It was finished. He took a few things from the counter, a folder, his charger, his spare keys. I asked if he was leaving. He said, "No, just organizing." I laughed, said he sounded like a robot. He smiled faintly. "Robots keep records," he said. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a shaky breath. After he went into the guest room again, I sat at the table staring at my reflection in the black TV screen. I looked composed, even confident, but my hands were shaking. I opened my phone and typed a message to Mara. "He's acting weird." Then I erased it. Instead, I posted a new photo, an old one of me and Noah at a work event, cropped so it looked recent. The caption, "Sometimes history has good taste." Within minutes it started getting likes. Each notification felt like oxygen. I didn't even notice the faint sound of the front door closing again, or the car engine starting outside. By the time I looked up, the apartment was empty. Only the printer light glowed faintly through the crack of the guest room door, blinking like a quiet heartbeat. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the dark. Everything smelled faintly of paper and rain. I told myself I still had control. I told myself Evan would calm down. I told myself he loved me too much to leave. Over and over, until the words sounded like truth. But the more I said them, the less I believed them. By the next week, things had shifted completely, though no one would have guessed from the outside. Evan and I still lived in the same apartment, slept under the same roof, ate at the same table. But it was like living beside a ghost who kept records instead of breathing. I tried to act normal, made coffee, asked about his day, played music while I got ready for work. He didn't argue or roll his eyes. He just nodded, polite and steady, like a stranger renting space beside me. People at the office started to notice my posts again. That picture of Noah and me from last weekend's throwback had done exactly what I wanted. The comments were wild. Couple goals, he still loves you, the energy between you two. It was stupid validation, but it worked. I felt in control again, like I was winning the story. I even told Mara at lunch that Evan was probably over it by now. She didn't look convinced. She said, "You keep saying you're fine like it's a dare." I laughed and said, "Maybe it is." That night, I decided to make dinner, a peace offering. Something simple. Pasta, wine, the kind of meal you eat when you're ready to start over. When Evan came in, I smiled and said, "Look, I'm cooking for once." He said, "That's nice." No sarcasm, no warmth either. I poured him a glass of wine and told him we should talk, really talk. He sat down, opened his laptop on the table and said, "Go ahead." I said I hated how tense things had gotten, that it wasn't worth ruining everything over one mistake. He didn't correct me, didn't even look up. I said I knew he'd been distant, maybe even hurt, but we both had responsibilities. To each other, to the life we built. He closed the laptop then and looked straight at me. "Responsibilities," he repeated. "That's what you call them?" I said yes, because that sounded grown up, reasonable. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You make everything sound like a performance." I said, "At least I'm still showing up." For a moment I thought he might shout, but instead he smiled. Small, tired, almost kind. "You really believe you can narrate your way out of this," he said quietly. "Like if you explain it long enough, it stops being real." I felt heat rise in my face. I told him that talking was better than pretending everything was fine. He said, We're not pretending anymore. Then he stood up, took his plate, rinsed it, and left me sitting there with mine untouched. When the door clicked, I muttered under my breath that he was impossible. But something about his calmness unnerved me more than anger would have. I went to the guest room after a while, wanting to at least see what he'd been hiding. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked unnaturally neat. His laptop was closed, but a small USB lay beside it, labeled only with the date from the night of the rooftop party. I picked it up, turned it in my hand. For a second, I thought about plugging it in, but then I heard his footsteps coming down the hall. I put it back exactly where it was. He stopped in the doorway and said, "Looking for something?" I said, "Just checking if you were okay." He said, "I am. Are you?" The way he asked it made my stomach twist. I said I was fine, that I'd just been worried about him. He nodded, opened the laptop, and the printer beside him came alive with a low hum. A blank sheet slid out. He took it without looking and said, "Sometimes I print nothing, just to make sure it still works." Then he shut the lid. I laughed awkwardly, said he was being weird. He said, "Better weird than careless." The next day, my manager called me into his office. Someone had emailed him screenshots of my posts with Noah, saying it was unprofessional conduct. He wouldn't say who, but I could guess. I apologized, said it was a misunderstanding, a joke between friends. He said he hoped so because HR might want to review it. I walked out trembling, furious. I texted Evan immediately. "Did you contact my office?" He didn't reply. That night, we had to attend a birthday dinner for his cousin. I told him maybe we should skip it, but he said calmly, "No, people should see we're fine." We arrived late. Everyone greeted us warmly, pretending not to notice the distance. Halfway through dinner, someone asked about the wedding. I joked that Evan was still trying to figure out if he wanted to keep me. People laughed. He didn't. Then he said, "I think some choices make themselves." The table went quiet. I brushed it off with a smile, said he had a dark sense of humor. His mother's eyes didn't leave me. Later, while he was paying the bill, Mara texted me, "What did you do?" He just posted a picture without his ring. I looked across the table. She was right. The skin on his hand was pale where the band used to be. My throat tightened. I excused myself to the restroom and stared at my reflection. My makeup looked too bright, my smile too wide. When I came back, he was talking to his mother quietly. She nodded once, then looked at me and said, "We should all be honest with ourselves." The ride home was silent. When we got inside, I said, "You humiliated me in front of your family." He said, "You did that by yourself." I told him he was cruel, that I was trying to fix things. He said, "You're trying to rewrite them." I snapped that he always made everything so calculated. He said, "That's the only way to stop being blindsided." He went to the study again. I poured another glass of wine and scrolled through messages. Noah had sent one during dinner. "Still surviving the drama?" I typed, "Barely, but didn't send it." When I looked up, the guest room light was off, but a faint beep echoed once, short and mechanical, like a phone alert. The next morning, his phone sat on the counter, screen face up. I caught a glimpse of a notification. "File uploaded successfully." He came in just as I looked. I said, "You're always working." He said, "Always improving." I said, "On what?" He said, "Systems." Then he left. At work, people whispered again. Someone had seen the ringless photo too. I laughed it off, told them we were modern, but the laughter felt thin. During lunch, I posted another photo, this one of me smiling with Mara at the cafe. Caption, "Too blessed to be stressed." Within minutes, Evan liked it, just a single like. I didn't know whether it was sarcasm or a farewell. That evening, I came home to find the dining table cleared, surfaces wiped, drawers half empty. His jacket was gone from the hook. I felt my throat close. I called his name, no answer. In the guest room, The desk was bare except for one thing, a small folded note with my name on it. Inside, just one line in his careful handwriting. Don't say I didn't listen. I sank onto the bed and stared at the wall. The silence wasn't even heavy anymore. It was absolute. I thought about all the words I'd thrown at him, every explanation, every defense. None of them mattered now. Outside, the printer light blinked once, then went dark, like it was done recording too. The morning after the dinner, the apartment felt rearranged again. Things I hadn't touched were missing. The framed photo from our engagement trip was gone, replaced by a landscape print that wasn't ours. His jackets were gone from the hallway rack. On the counter, 2 mugs sat far apart, his upside down, mine half full from the night before. I stared at them longer than I should have. The silence was too even, like he'd vacuumed the noise out of the air before leaving. I told myself he was just cooling off, that we'd talk after work. But at my desk that day, people's glances felt heavier than usual. Someone had shared my "too blessed to be stressed" post in the group chat, adding a sarcastic comment. I laughed it off, said I wasn't losing sleep. Inside, I could feel the panic starting. I called Mara during lunch, told her everyone was acting strange. She hesitated before saying, "Maybe they saw something you didn't." I asked what that meant, but she wouldn't explain. She only said she'd heard Evan was handling things. When I got home that night, his car was in the lot, but the lights inside were dim. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on his laptop. The screen showed a spreadsheet filled with color-coded columns, dates, times, short notes. Some entries had my name. I asked what it was. He said, "Household planning." I told him he was getting obsessive. He didn't argue. He just said, "Order helps when things break." That calm tone again. I told him it was creepy, that normal people don't track their spouses like inventory. He looked up, unbothered. "Normal people don't treat honesty like theatre," he said. I froze, unsure what that even meant. The next day, his mother called. Elaine never called me directly. Her voice was polite, distant. She said she'd heard about the misunderstanding between Evan and me. I said it was nothing serious, that couples go through phases. She paused for a moment, then said, "Phases don't require witnesses." I didn't answer. She said she hoped I'd remember the difference between privacy and performance. When we hung up, I felt like she'd already made up her mind about me. That weekend, his family hosted a small brunch. I didn't want to go, but I knew not showing up would look worse. I spent an hour getting ready, choosing a dress that said normal. When I walked into the restaurant, I saw Evan already there, sitting beside his mother, speaking quietly to a server. He looked collected, even cheerful. I smiled, pretending nothing was wrong. The moment I sat down, conversation dipped. People greeted me, but the tone had changed, less warmth, more curiosity. I tried to steer things towards safe topics. I asked about his sister's baby, about work, about anything else. Evan stayed polite, calm, answering every question but not looking at me. Halfway through, his nephew Toby tugged my sleeve and asked innocently, "Are you still going to be in the wedding?" The table went silent. Elaine cleared her throat and said, "Eat your pancakes, Toby." I laughed too loudly and said, "Of course I am." Evan didn't correct me, but his fork stopped moving. To fill the silence, I made a joke. I said Evan had been taking our relationship too seriously, that he probably had a spreadsheet for our arguments. A few people chuckled, but Elaine's expression didn't change. She said softly, "He's always been organized. It's the rest of us who get messy." I tried to joke back, but the words stuck. When the check came, I reached for it, saying I'd cover it as a peace offering. Evan stopped me. He paid the full amount, left a precise tip, and thanked the waiter like it was any other meal. I stood to follow him, but he said he had an errand and would meet me at home. I watched him walk out, straight posture, no backward glance. I lingered at the table while the family talked quietly. Elaine asked if I was okay. I said yes, just tired. She smiled, small and sharp. Tired is different from finished, she said. I wanted to ask what she knew, but I couldn't find the words. When I got home, his laptop was gone from the table. In its place was a small folder labeled Household. I opened it, expecting bills or insurance forms. Instead, there were typed lists, dates, photos, and brief notes written in his clean handwriting. Friday rooftop celebration. Return 1:07 a.m. Vehicle, dark sedan, partial plate seen. My hand started shaking. I slammed the folder shut just as I heard the front door open. He stepped inside, calm as ever. I said, "You're keeping files on me." He said, "I'm keeping clarity." I told him he was insane, that no normal person does this. He said, "Maybe not, but normal stopped mattering when truth became optional." I tried to sound strong, asked if he planned to stalk me next. He shook his head. "No, I'm done chasing. I'm just documenting." That night I called Mara again, voice trembling. She said quietly, "Isolde, if he's collecting things, that means he's done talking." I said she was being dramatic. She said, "No, he's protecting himself." The call dropped when my battery died. I sat in the dark staring at the folder. The printer light blinked once, slow and steady. I pulled out one of his shirts from the laundry basket and pressed it to my face, just to smell something human. For a moment, I thought about apologizing, but I didn't know which part to apologize for. The car ride, the posts, or pretending it was all harmless. The next morning, he was already dressed, pouring coffee. He asked if I wanted some. I said no. He nodded, rinsed his cup, and set it upside down again. Before leaving, he said, "Let's not perform anymore. It's exhausting." I wanted to ask what that meant, but he was already out the door. Later that day, I received a message from a number I didn't know. It was a photo. Me at the rooftop bar with Noah, caught mid-laugh, his hand brushing my shoulder. Under it, a caption. "Perspective changes everything." No sender name, no explanation. I deleted it, heart pounding. When Evan came home that night, I tried to sound casual. I said people were sending pictures to cause drama. He said, "They don't need to. The truth photographs itself." I told him I was sick of the riddles, that he needed to either forgive me or stop acting like some detective. He looked at me, calm and distant. "I already stopped acting," he said. I felt something crack inside me then, fear mixed with anger, the sudden understanding that his silence was no longer punishment. It was preparation. I said, "You think this is some game you can win?" He said, "No, I think it's already over. I'm just filing the ending." He went to the guest room and locked the door. Through the gap, I saw the faint red light of the printer blink again, then steady, then fade. I sat alone at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the folder marked Household, and whispered to myself that everything could still be fixed. But even my own voice sounded like a lie. The next week passed in half conversations and closed doors. I stopped trying to read his silence because it had stopped being silence. It was now a schedule. He left every morning at the same time, came back at the same time, carried the same folder with him each day. Even his keys sounded rehearsed when they hit the bowl by the door. I wanted to ask where he was going, but the way he moved, steady, deliberate, made me afraid of the answer. One evening, I made dinner again. I cooked his favorite, chicken with lemon butter, and lit candles like I used to when things were good. When he came home, I smiled and said I wanted to talk, really talk this time. He looked tired, loosened his tie, and sat down across from me. I asked if he was ready to stop keeping score. He said, "I'm not keeping score. I'm keeping proof." The word proof froze me. I laughed too quickly, said he was taking things too far. He didn't argue. He just asked calmly, "Why do you need people to believe you're right so badly?" I told him that's what confidence looks like. He said, "No, that's what guilt looks like dressed up." I called him cruel. He said, "You call anything cruel that doesn't bend toward you." I pushed my plate away. "So what now?" I asked. He said, "Now I handle it properly." His tone didn't shift, but the word properly sounded like a decision already made. I asked what that meant. He said, "It means I'm done reacting." That night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the guest room after he left for work the next morning. The desk was nearly empty except for a single sticky note. Archive B, complete. I didn't know what Archive A even was, but something about the order of it made me feel small. I opened the drawer under the printer. It was empty, except for a flash drive, labeled by date, last Friday's. I pocketed it before I could stop myself. I brought the drive to my laptop and hesitated for a long time before plugging it in. A folder popped up with 3 subfolders: phone, accounts, photos. I opened one and saw screenshots of my messages with Noah, old ones I'd deleted months ago. Another had the social media posts I'd thought were harmless. Captions, comments, timestamps, all sorted neatly. I shut the laptop like it had burned me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That evening, I asked him if he'd gone through my phone. He said, "No need to. You post everything publicly." I said that was private. He said, "Then stop inviting strangers into it." I told him he was manipulative. He said, "Projection, again." The calmness made me want to scream. I asked if he was planning to leave. He said, "Leaving isn't the same as finishing." A few days later, Mara called. She sounded nervous. "Have you talked to him today?" she asked. I said no. Why? She hesitated, then said she'd seen him leaving an office downtown carrying a folder. "He looked too calm," she said. I told her not to be dramatic, but my chest tightened anyway. I hung up and checked his calendar on the fridge. The new entry read, "Notary, 2:15. When he came home that night, I confronted him. "What were you doing downtown?" I asked. He said, "Errands." I said, "At a notary." He looked at me for a long time, then said, "You notice things only when they threaten you." I told him to stop talking like that, like everything was a puzzle. He said, "It's just order, Isolde." I followed him to the living room. "You can't just decide to erase me," I said. He replied, "I'm not erasing you. I'm recording you." I felt my throat go dry. "You make it sound like a case," I said. He answered, "It is one." That night, I deleted every photo of Noah from my phone. I even archived the post where people had commented about us. I texted Mara that I was going to fix things, that I'd apologize properly, that he just needed to see I was serious. She replied, "Be careful what you call fixing. Some things are already set." The next morning he wasn't home. I found his coffee mug rinsed, his laptop gone, and a single envelope on the counter addressed to me. Inside was a small key and a note. "You'll understand soon." I thought about calling him, but instead, I sat on the couch for an hour just staring at that key. It didn't fit any lock I knew. When he came home that evening, he seemed almost relaxed. He poured himself a drink and asked how my day was. I told him I'd spent it thinking. He said, "Good. Reflection's useful." I said I didn't need to reflect. I needed him to forgive me. He said, "Forgiveness isn't the goal." I moved closer, tried to touch his arm. "Then what is?" I asked. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Resolution," he said. I tried to smile, made it sound like a joke. "You talk like a lawyer now." He didn't smile back. I followed him as he walked toward the balcony. "Can we just start over?" I asked. "I'm tired of this." He said, "Me too." His tone didn't sound hopeful. It sounded finished. The quiet stretched between us, heavy and certain. I told him he was cold, that he was punishing me for being human. He said, "You call punishment anything that limits you." I told him he was twisting my words again. He said, "No, I'm just writing them down." That line stayed in my head long after he went to bed. The printer clicked once around midnight, and I heard a page slide out. I didn't dare check what it was. I sat awake until sunrise, watching the window fill with light. When he left for work, he paused at the door and looked back at me. "We'll talk soon," he said. I asked when. He said, "After it's official." I asked what it was. He didn't answer. The door closed softly, like always. I made coffee, but it tasted bitter. The apartment was too quiet again. On the fridge, the calendar had another new entry written in his neat handwriting: Downtown 9 Kiki, proper filing. I ran my thumb over the words, hoping they didn't mean what they sounded like. By noon, I texted Mara. He said he'll handle it properly. What does that mean? She never answered. I stared at the screen until the message marked read, then went blank. When evening came, I sat on the couch with the envelope key still in my hand. I told myself it didn't mean anything serious, that he was just trying to scare me. I rehearsed what I'd say when he came home, that we'd go away for the weekend, reset, make everyone stop talking. But when I heard his car pull in, I couldn't move. The front door opened quietly. He set his folder on the counter, met my eyes and said, "I told you, properly." Then he went to the guest room, closed the door and locked it. The printer hummed once. I stayed where I was, gripping the little key so tightly the edge cut my palm, and waited for the sound to stop. He waited until I came to his office, still trying to sound calm, pretending I was there to talk. The lobby was busy, glass walls reflecting every stare. A woman from reception handed me an envelope and said, "He asked me to give you this." Inside were formal papers: termination of engagement, joint lease dissolution, property division, all signed, stamped, dated that morning. Evan stood nearby, watching. "This is what properly means," he said. Then he turned away.